Welcome to the Wealth Acceleration Podcast with your host, wealth coach Wade Reed.
Hey, what is up, Money Masters? It's Wade Reed here for another episode of the Wealth Acceleration Podcast. Guys, I am so excited because I have just completed an interview with an incredible guy. And you're going to hear that interview in the next podcast. So as I mentioned in my last episode, I said I was going to maybe skip an episode or two. Well, I did skip last week, and I'm doing a talking head this week because I feel like I need to share with you, prior to the next set of interviews, a set of beliefs that I've come to subscribe to that align with what I believe are some higher laws or some higher ways of believing and acting about life that allow us to be even more successful in our day-to-day home life, in the people that we serve, and ultimately for humanity at large. And so I don't know if you guys have anything like this in your own life, but having some sort of personal belief system, a set of standards, what in the past used to be more commonly called a credo, a set of beliefs that we live by. You know, in many religious organizations, there's some set of beliefs, and you don't have to be religious to have a set of beliefs. You just need to have something that really drives your life, that sets the standard for how you choose to behave in a moral society like the one we live in, or at least one that used to be moral. Now it's pretty amoral. It's pretty immoral even. There's not just apathy, but there's true immorality. There's hurt, there's pain, there's sorrow, there's so much negativity and difficulty that we deal with. And I think it's partly a function of losing our morality or our moral code as a society. And so for those of you listening to this, I strive to educate and inspire those who hear my voice. I, from a very young age, have been taught to always leave people better than I found them, and to do what is right and let the consequences follow. What that means is we don't just do what's legal, but we do what is right. And that is one of the core beliefs that I currently have and that I have in this credo that I subscribe to. We must commit to achieve excellence while maintaining integrity, honesty, trust, and respect. So listen to that one closely. We must commit to achieve excellence. Why excellence? Why not mediocrity? Why not pretty good? Why not really good? No, we want excellence. We want an ethic of excellence. We want to live a standard that is the best of our ability, beyond what we might do just to get by, to strive for excellence while maintaining integrity, honesty, trust, and respect. Integrity, honesty, trust, and respect. These are core values, guys, that we all must have in order to have a successful future, one that we're proud of. That is, we can be very successful doing illegal things. I mean, there's plenty of people getting taken down right now, these gangs and so forth across the world that are getting taken down. This MS-13 that just, the gang member that just got taken down by Donald Trump's team. There's great wickedness that does millions and billions of dollars a year to serve their organizations, but it's not of high moral value. So we want to do it in the right way. That's a big deal. Listen to this. We need to adhere to a higher moral and ethical code that exceeds the minimum requirements set forth by our local and federal laws. Those are minimum standards, and we want to exceed that. Anyone listening to this, man, I want you guys to live a very high standard of moral conduct. Do what's right. Demonstrate a clear priority for effecting positive change over the accumulation of wealth. So while this podcast is called the Wealth Acceleration Podcast, as you are hopefully getting, wealth is much more than money. Wealth is in relationships. Wealth is in our knowledge. Wealth is in who we become as a human being. Wealth is in the work that we do in the world that solves problems, serves people, and creates value. So this is one of the principles that I live by. We must demonstrate a clear priority for effecting positive change, adding value to people's lives, making things better than we found them over the accumulation of wealth. Wealth should not be the end. It should be a means to effect change. We shall strive to contribute towards a higher level of education that promotes free thinking without oppression. Free thinking without oppression. This is one of my big concerns about the world. As I've studied the educational system over the past 100 years, literally during the time of the Industrial Revolution, the school systems were created to generate employees of factories. And for whatever reason, that never really changed. And we still have a school system that largely is guided by bells and times and specific ways of doing education that teach people mostly to be employees of other people and to not have free thought, but to largely let the thinking be done by their teachers and by the professors who wrote the books. Like, we need to have an open mind and be able to think freely, to dream freely, to have a big vision for ourselves, to ask questions about why things are the way they are, and to consider whether they are still effective. The systems of how we govern our communities, are they still effective? Or can we affect change by thinking differently, again, without oppression? We must always treat others with respect. That's a big value in my family. In fact, we have a mission statement and it talks about that. And we have three key things in our family dynamic. Is it respectful to your sibling? Was it kind? And did it create safety, emotional safety and physical safety? If we broke one of those three things, we broke the Reed family credo, like our core values of respect, kindness, and safety. So we must always treat each other with respect and honor, free from discrimination, regardless of people's race, gender, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical condition. We gotta love each other. I mean, I was bold about that last time. I love you guys. And I said that I love you guys because God first loved us. And I believe in a God who cares deeply for each individual that's on this planet. That we're here for a reason, that we have a big purpose to fulfill, that we have a mission to fulfill, and we need to seek that out, and we need to strive to do the best we can to fulfill the role we have as a unique individual in the societies that we live in. I'm reminded of a story. The state of Utah, there's a beehive as a symbol, and the beehive is on the state flag because a beehive represents industry. It represents unity. It represents kind of differentiation of roles. You have a queen, and then you have worker bees, and you have the protector bees or warrior bees. I don't know what they call them, but each of these roles is very important to protect the hive, to produce the honey that they are just naturally inclined to produce. So these little worker bees that go out and they spend their entire lives harvesting pollen, which then gets brought into the hive and then ultimately creates honey. And somebody once taught me that a honeybee, its entire life will produce about a thimble worth, or maybe about a tablespoon worth of honey. And that seems so small. And yet many of us have jars of honey in our households. There's so much honey that gets produced because of the unification of effort. It's pretty cool, right? What we can do together as opposed to as a single individual. We might think it's small. You might think the work you're doing is not that important, but in the scheme of things, if you're working as an employee in a business by chance, in fact, most people in the United States are, that's okay, because you're providing a valuable service to the overall organization, which overall supports the community that you live in and the people that you serve. And perhaps it's a local mom and pop sandwich shop, or perhaps it's a global brand that's serving people across the world. But your job does matter. Now, is that to say that you can't strive for more? As human beings, we can. A honeybee cannot. But as human beings, we get to have this visualing faculty that God has given us, this creative faculty to seek out things that are above what we're currently doing, to seek greater knowledge, to seek greater opportunities, to serve in different ways, to progress and become more and more like the God who made us, to have the characteristics of godliness. And that's primarily of love and respect and of service to one another. Here's another one. We shall be generous with our own time and resources in order to contribute to the positive progression of humanity. This gets back to that thing I've talked about a lot, that there's a great law of reciprocity that says when we give, we will get. Some people call it karma. The law of the tithe in the Old Testament talks about the importance of giving a tenth of our increase, a tenth of what we have back to society through our generosity, through our charitable giving. If you're involved in a church, giving to your church to support that and the work that's going on there, giving a tenth of our money and our resources and even our time. That's being generous. Generosity brings great blessings. Now, here's another. We will give our fellow man the benefit of the doubt, free from judgment, to strengthen and promote trust within our social and business communities. Wouldn't that be great? Give people the benefit of the doubt. Recognize that everyone's got something difficult going on in their lives. And if they do something stupid, mean, harsh, it's not likely that it's directed at you, but likely lashing out in some way at a circumstance in their life. Let's give people the benefit of the doubt. Let's give our spouse the benefit of the doubt. Let's give our children the benefit of the doubt. Our colleagues, our leaders in our churches and in our businesses, our partners. Let's live with the mindset that everyone's going through something difficult, and we ought to give them grace, benefit of the doubt, free from judgment, to strengthen and promote trust. Trust is a big value that I have. Trust in one another. We gain that trust by hearing one another, by listening, and then giving some sense of confirmation that we've heard them and our loved ones, our peers. Let's be there for people. Let's earn people's trust. A couple more. We must be willing to graciously accept the mistakes of others. We shall teach and mentor others in the principles that we live by. Think about lifting other people. This is a beautiful story. A man named Viktor Frankl. If you haven't heard of him, you need to. He's got a book called, oh my gosh, it slipped my mind. What is it? Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. This was a Holocaust survivor, and his book was not intended to tell all of the difficulties of being in the Holocaust in a concentration camp. This was a Jewish professor of psychology. And so he framed his book and the experience he talked about as to what people went through psychologically. And he started to recognize the people that survived versus those who didn't survive, and what caused people not to survive. And what was really fascinating was an over-optimism, being too optimistic, thinking they're coming for us, we're going to get out today, we're going to get out today. And ultimately that led to broken dreams, that they had set such a high standard for what was going to happen. Their freedom was going to happen so quickly that in the end, when it never came, it broke their spirits and they would die. And then people who were pessimistic in a similar way, we're never going to get out of here. It's impossible. It's never going to go over. We're just going to be killed today. They kind of lost their spirits even faster. But those who had some sort of modest belief that I'm just going to deal with the circumstances that I'm in. I mean, these people are literally stripped of every single thing they owned. Their possessions were all taken away. Their clothing was taken away. Their hair was taken from their bodies. Their name was removed, and they were given just a number. And what Viktor Frankl recognized is that even though he never was called by his actual name during the time in the concentration camp, and he was only ever called by the number, he still had a free will. And the only thing that could not be taken away was what he called his will to meaning, or in other words, a desire for something bigger, a survival instinct, a will to live, that there was some meaning in the affliction that he was going through. And he saw a vision of himself speaking on this topic at a university, having survived the concentration camp. And this vision held his will to have a meaning in life, that he could go talk and inspire others to live a life of purpose. And in many of the interviews that he gave, he's passed away at this point, but in many of the interviews, he would talk about the responsibility that comes along with liberty. And he had a clay, what do you call it, a statue, just a piece of art that was two hands clasping at the wrist, one above the other, lifting the other out of its difficult circumstances. And this became a symbol of what he would call the responsibility that we have to our fellow man. And he had a vision of how the East Coast has a Statue of Liberty, but on the West Coast, the United States would have a Statue of Responsibility. And guys, I don't know if you're hearing this, if you've ever heard of that before, but it has been in process for 20 plus years. Stephen Covey and a couple other people have been trying to move that forward for 20 to 30 years. In the past decade to 15 years since I've been aware of it, it's been moving forward. There is a design of that two hands clasping 300-foot statue. There's several pieces of land on the West Coast that have been identified, and still trying to get the right funding, because it's something like $300 million to get this thing built. And perhaps it'll happen in the next few years. But in the meantime, if we don't have the statue built, we can be that type of person, one who lifts the other out of their difficult circumstances and is always looking to make people better than they found them. So, guys, these are the things that I live by. These are the things that I care about, and that I hope that you'll take on in your own lives to to commit to excellence and to live a higher moral code of ethics than the standards of our nation, than the laws demand of us. Those are minimums. Let's live a higher standard. And I think that will be greatly beneficial to us accelerating our wealth. All right, guys, can't wait to share the interviews that are coming up. The guy's name's Eric Levine. He is a founder of fitness organizations and a billionaire and a humble guy and a very, very interesting guy, a man that has inspired me by just the goodness that he has within him. And it's let me know that people that create massive wealth, it's not because they sought it out. In fact, in the interview, you'll hear this. It's not so much about money. I don't think he talks about that at all. He wasn't seeking particularly money. He just was seeking out doing things that were interesting, that solved problems in society. And fitness was a big thing in his day. Gyms were just coming online, and he saw an opportunity to take it to Canada. He saw an opportunity to take it to Asia, and he spent his young adult life creating opportunity for people to have access to and ultimately democratize access to health equipment to keep their bodies active and healthy and strong. And I think that's a worthy goal to seek out, to help people have a healthy life. And in the end, because of the value he created, a huge amount of wealth was created. And we get to hear some of his experiences and his viewpoints on what wealth is and how it's come about and the things that drove him. And he gives some great advice for entrepreneurs. So I can't wait for you guys to hear that in the next episode. All right, have a great one. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wealth Acceleration Podcast. We hope the insights from today's episode help you streamline your finances and grow your wealth stress-free. For show notes from today's episode and more tips on creating a comprehensive wealth-building plan, visit moneymasterycoaching.com. Remember, financial freedom is attainable. Until next time, keep accelerating towards your goals. See you on the next episode.